So so I immediately started to say, okay, well, what am I going to do next? And I was interviewing and all that stuff, but I really had this kind of desire to do something for myself and kind of quickly realized that I don't know what I'm doing and I'm not equipped to do anything without some support. And that's how I got hooked up with the entrepreneur source. And I went through this same process now that we take people through. And as I say, I get to kind of help people that were in the same position that I was in just go through and figure things out. And so I've been doing this for about 8 years. Like Joe said, we work all over the country, and I was kind of able to just design a business around what I wanted my life to look like. I didn't want to sell things anymore. I didn't want to manage people, just wanted to be responsible for me, and I never wanted to see an airplane again. So here I am. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll go ahead and jump into this. Joe, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks. So, just real quick about the Entrepreneur Source to give you a little background about our franchise. And the Entrepreneur Source is a franchise business. Again, it's been around we're actually in our 41st year now. So it's a career ownership, career transition type of franchise where, again, Chip had mentioned, we help clients to explore possibilities, quite honestly. And actually, the 2026 just came out this past week, and we are actually number one again. So we've been number one for many years now in the career ownership coaching franchise business. And so one of the things that we always ask our clients about is what's your why? Why are you here today? What scares you more, staying what you're doing or changing? We'll talk about, and really what I mentioned earlier for myself, my why is I was tired of being out of control, meaning I wasn't in control of my own destiny. The corporate world, they laid me off. I laid off 4 times in I don't know how many years, and I was just frustrated by that. And so my why really is this quote right here is control your own destiny or someone else will. And that really sums up the corporate world, right? You're not in control, they're in control. Another quote that we'll come across a little later that kind of sums up my why is build your own dreams or someone else will hire you to build theirs. And that's another great quote that it goes back to the corporate world. If you're in the corporate world, you're just building other people's dreams, but and they're going to hire you to do it, quite honestly. So it's important to kind of think about why are you here today? Because ultimately, that's going to be what we call your North Star. And we'll get into all this as we go through it. But your North Star is where you want to go. What's the next version of yourself? What's the lifestyle you want to lead? What's the financial income you want to achieve? What's the professional goals that you have for yourself? So it all starts with your why. Why are you here today? Again, these are just some of the things that might appeal to you that some clients have shared. I talk about the whole insecurity. The corporate world, there's a lot of insecurity in the corporate world. You may find that you just don't align well with the values of the corporate environment. You may be reaching limited growth opportunities. You may have hit a ceiling in the corporate world where you can't achieve the financial goals that you've set for yourself. And a lot of times, you're just not happy. They're frustrated. You're not happy. You've kind of not you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you can't figure out how to get out of it. But again, these are just some, they're not all. And the goal really is for you to think about is what's your why? What is the why? What's your North Star? And so as you think about maybe transitioning into entrepreneurship, these are four big things that I really would encourage you to think about. And our coaching, our exercises are all geared around kind of defining and identifying and quantifying these four things. Freedom, flexibility, fulfillment, growth potential. And the thing to think about why these are so important is every business is not created equal. If you are aware of business, you know that they're not created equal. And every business is going to deliver different levels of each one of these. And the goal really is as you go through the exercises and for yourself, is really to align yourself with the right businesses. And that's the goal of what we have as coaches. So again, we're going to get into this more later, but we define freedom simply as being in control of your schedule. You have control of your schedule. You can do what you want, when you want, how you want. You're going to be in control of your income potential. There's not going to be a ceiling on how much you can make. You're going to be able to do your income goals that you set forth. And another part of this is going to be business decisions. You're going to be able to make your own decisions. You can choose what's right for you and not have others choose for you. Again, flexibility. Flexibility is really about having a business, to Chip's earlier point, that fits your lifestyle. Perfect example is the business that I we have today. The reason why this is so appealing to me is because this business allows me to work when I want to work. I travel when I want to work. I'm where I want to be, and I work when I want to work, kind of a thing. So it's allows me the flexibility. And then we're going to talk about fulfillment. Every job, as you've had, every corporate role or every business out there will deliver different levels of fulfillment. Your happiness, how they align, your passions, your skills that you have, your values, etc. So we're going to talk about that. And then each business is going to have a growth potential, and they're not equal, as I mentioned. So some businesses will be able to grow faster, quicker, bigger, and others will take longer, slower, and achieve something in a different way. So really the goal is to what's right for you. There's no right or wrong in anything that we will talk about or you would bring up or your exercises that you would complete them. It's simply what is right for you and what's the right businesses for you to align with to learn. Keep in mind, this whole experience is around education. It's not about commitments. It's not about obligations. It's not about risk or stress. It's simply this experience is really giving yourself permission to go out and explore what might be possible. So really, what is this? So a high level overview is we have a patented coaching system that we provide, and it's a complementary coaching system, and it's really all designed around, as I mentioned, to allow clients to learn, explore, and educate themselves on what might be possible. And it's specifically in this case through a franchise business. And as I use the word franchise and Chip uses the word franchise, we're not referring to fast food, French fries, and restaurants. Those are all franchises, but those are not, and we actually have some of them in the portfolio that we work with, but that's not the main emphasis here. The main emphasis is finding the right business that'll fit your lifestyle and align the best for you to get educated on. So we'll do that, and we're going to dive into this a little bit more. But this is kind of a high level overview. We do this, and you should do this in a multitude of ways. And there's exercises that we provide, and these are the exercises. So the first exercise is going to be write your own success story. That's going to be the foundation for this whole coaching experience, and that's going to give you the ability to identify your personal goals, professional goals, and financial goals. We call them ILWE. So ILWE stands for income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. So that each of these exercises will take around 20, 25 minutes to complete. So these are not long, intensive exercises. The second exercise is really more around a self-assessment. It's called Discover What Makes You Unique. Now, you may have heard of this or even taken it in your career. It's called the DISC, DISC. And as you know, we're all different and we're all unique. And we all come with different points of view and we show up differently and we all have different skills. And the goal again is to identify what are yours and then be able to align with businesses that value and appreciate those skills. The third exercise we'll talk about is going to be more business ownership education. It's going to be around all the various industries and areas of interest out there, all the different types of environments that are out there, work from home, virtual, brick and mortar, etc. And then the second part of the education is going to be around discovery and validation. So discovery and validation is simply another opportunity to educate and explore and learn. And this time you're going to be doing it with franchise businesses that align again with who you are, what you want to get accomplished. And you're going to be in the validation part is where you're going to be able to meet with franchisees and learn it directly from someone who's actually been doing it. Again, keep in mind the goal of this experience and the goal for you to go through this experience and learn is really it's education and exploration. So when you think about education and exploration, it doesn't mean a commitment. There are no commitments required on our part. There is no obligations and there's no cost, no risk, no anything. So before I move on, usually one of the questions that someone will ask is around complementary. What does that mean? How can it be complementary? How do you generate income? So Chip and I really we get compensated in two ways. So the first way would be is if and when a client is awarded a franchise business in they choose to accept that business, the franchisor pays a referral fee to ourselves as coaches. So think of like a real estate agent, for example, where they'll help you find a home and you're not paying them anything for that service. So it's the same thing. We're going to help you find the right business to learn and educate yourself on, and you're not obligated to pay us, and nor will you ever be obligated to pay us anything. But ultimately, how Chip and I get compensated is through providing a great education and a great value and a great experience where clients are going to want to refer their family and friends to us. They're going to want to write reviews for us or recommendations. So that's how we really generate our businesses through referrals and recommendations. So that's what our goal is to provide that education. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chip. Um, he's going to walk you through the U 2.0 exercises. But before I do that, I want to pause for a second. I know I've said a lot already. Is there any thoughts or questions at this point that anybody would like to ask before we continue?
I'm good.
All right, perfect. Again, as I mentioned, if you have questions, please feel free to unmute and ask. You can put them in chat also, and I will pick them up, or Chip will pick them up in the chat as well if that's easier. But for now, we're going to have Chip go ahead and walk you through the first exercise.
Yeah, and just to further clarify what Joe said, I want everybody to understand, right? We are not business brokers. We are not here to sell you anything. I always tell my clients, look, I'm not good enough to choose your future for you. And quite frankly, I don't want that responsibility. But what we try to do is help people figure out what is right for them. And that's really what this whole thing is about. It's a lot more, like Joe said, it's a lot more about the why than it is the what. One of the things that really gets people off track when they start thinking about the idea of getting in business for themselves is they start thinking about what should it be? What is that great idea? And they expect that to kind of hit like a lightning bolt. And hey, once I have that great idea, then I'm going to do something. Sometimes that works out, but most often than not, that is not what works out, right? It's usually action that precedes the kind of confidence and certainty that I just talked about. And the other danger, quite frankly, is when people start thinking about what first, it leads them down the role of passion. Like, what do I like to do? It's like Joe talked about. We don't work with a lot of restaurant businesses. Not that there's anything wrong with a restaurant business, but that a lot of times is a passion kind of business. And people will say, I want to get into business for myself. I love to cook. I love to eat. So I should open a restaurant. Maybe not. That owning a restaurant is very rarely has anything to do about cooking. It has to do with managing really razor thin margins and a lot of turnover. And if you're okay with that, great. But otherwise, you might end up buying yourself a job that you're really going to hate. So we want people to focus on what are you trying to accomplish? What do you actually want the business to do for you? What is the life that you want? That way you can start identifying what are the businesses out there that could give me the life that I want. And then it becomes this concept of you using a business as the vehicle or as the thing to get you what you want in life. Okay, so all of that said, that's really where we try to start with the why first. And there is an exercise that we take people on, and we call it U 2.0. And I'll break this down a little bit more, but it does start with you thinking about what is this vision that I have for my ideal future. And if I've got that in mind, where do I need to be in a year to feel really good about my progress? Because you're not going to get there like that, right? So it is kind of about defining your goals, both financial, personal, and professional. But then we take you through this exercise. It's a little bit like a SWOT exercise. It's kind of in reverse, and it's just giving yourself the opportunity to take a step back and reflect. Say, okay, going forward, what are the things that I'm worried about, right? And take stock of that, right? Everybody's scared. Everybody's got some worries, right? If somebody's in the job world, right? Maybe it's, hey, the economy is not where it used to be. AI is taking over. Is my job going to be safe? If I'm going to do something different at some point, can I wait? Right. And the more you can identify those things, the more you can start putting steps in place. Like, okay, well, if I'm worried about artificial intelligence, taking the job that I have, again, I'm sure Joe has probably worked with a lot of IT people over the last couple of years because that's an industry that's getting really hit really hard by that. People were in programming, and now programming is being done by a lot of large language learning models. So, what are the things that I'm worried about, and what can I start to do about that, right? Another example, if you're thinking about being in business for yourself and you're worried about, hey, can I afford to do this? Well, don't let that fear or that uncertainty stop you from moving forward. Figure out what you need to do to understand how you could afford something. So maybe you need to educate yourself on funding. But again, this whole exercise is just about getting really honest with yourself. Okay, and once you've taken stock about all that, it's the opportunities, right? What's important to you personally and professionally? What are the things in life you would like to focus on if you were freed from all of those dangers and fears, right? And to Joe's point, maybe it's flexibility, maybe it's independence, maybe it's time with the family. That's what you should try to be solving for. What's going to solve for that? What are the businesses out there that are going to what that give you what you want in life, right? And then strengths are slightly different than skills. I mean, yes, to some degree it's transferable skills, but what are those things you have that you can leverage and what can you do with them? Do you have a really strong support network around? Okay, well, great. Lean on those folks. Ask them questions. Do you have a bias towards action? Are you somebody that can just deal with anything that's thrown at you? Those are the things you're going to be able to lean on if you start doing something for yourself. So let's break this down a little bit. When we talk about goals, that word itself scares people, right? And bookstores used to be filled with books about goals. Okay, and I've got a ton of goals books on my bookshelf, and I've never read any of them because it's kind of daunting when you think about goals in that big picture. So we try to break them down into these four buckets to make it a little bit more manageable. And we define these buckets by income, lifestyle, wealth, and equity. And you'll hear us use acronyms. We'll refer to that as ILWE. But it's basically these four things, and not everybody wants to have all those buckets filled equally. Everybody's different here, but what's important to you? So when you think about income, right, it's the earnings that you're getting through employment and investments, and just starting to think about what's the target for my income about being involved in a business. And then lifestyle, that is so important and it gets overlooked. And this is one of those things in that whole passion argument that comes into play. People don't take this into consideration, but think about how you want to live rather than necessarily how you want to work, right? Okay. Do you want to be just a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 person? Great. If that's important to you, then you absolutely shouldn't own a restaurant business, right? And then these last concepts, wealth and equity, they're a little harder to wrap your head around, but wealth is it's having the plentiful supply of goods and money, right? You know, do you need to invest in a business because you're not on track for the retirement goals? Is it about financial stability? Equity can be a component of that. Equity is like the interest in the assets that you've accumulated. Maybe it's your house, maybe it's rental property, but is there a gap somewhere? Do you need to close that gap, right? Are your goals so big that equity needs to be a part of that and you've got to build up something that has a value? Maybe that's something that a business can do for you. Maybe it can close that gap by becoming a saleable asset. Go ahead to the next one, Joe, because these are some questions we encourage people to think about, right? It's what do you want more of in your life, personally and professionally? I always say I had a great corporate career until I didn't. And I got a chance to step back. The whole lifestyle component of my career was really what was missing. I had no life. I was, all over the world 160 nights a year, missed my kids growing up. So whatever I did next, I was going to make sure that was a big part of it. Income, it's important to define this, and there's differences between goals and needs and wants. But in talking about goals, think in increments of 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. Okay, because here's the reality, right? If you choose the path of entrepreneurship, your income goal in year one is probably not going to be what it's going to be in year five. And this is one of the things that will cause pause for a lot of the executives that I work with. They build their lives around a 300 and 400 or $500,000 a year income, and they're almost handcuffed to that. Like it is very difficult to step back to this year one concept where you might not have that level of income. So think year one, year three, year five, but certainly in year one, you want to think more about, okay, yes, I may have this goal, but what are my needs, right? I got to make sure my needs are covered. And this is a really important step because what it does is it lets you start solving for these things. Same thing with lifestyle, and I'll explain that a little bit more here, but deciding how you want to live, right? If it's important to be able to work from home, if it's important to have, the ownership over your calendar, if it's important to have that flexibility, figure that out now before you get trapped in a business. And I'd say the same thing with a job, right? And just like I talked about the wealth and equity goals, do you need to close those gaps? And the more you can define these concepts, this is when you start kind of turning things around and you start looking at a business from a perspective of, can this business get me to these goals? Okay. If it can, then it may be a very good option for you. If it cannot, then it's probably not a good business for you, even if it's something that you're passionate about, even if it's something that you love to do. Because what if you started something, but it doesn't have the potential to get you to your goals? So that's why it is so important to define this North Star and then work backwards from that. Go ahead to the next one, Joe. He also talked about this step that we take people through, this assessment from this company's Success Insights, and it is commonly known as DISC. And DISC is just an acronym for the four normal aspects of human behavior that this measures. And we all have these normal aspects in varying degrees, but how you score in those areas starts to paint the picture of how people see you, right? How you show up. When you walk in the room, what do people see? So it's how you show up and why you show up. It's observable behavioral characteristics, and it is behavioral motivators, things that drive you to action. So the behavioral characteristics that it measures are dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. And if you go to the next slide, Joe, I'll break that down. So dominance, and like I said, we all have varying degrees of these things, and the great thing about DISC is there's no right or wrong. It's just who you are and how you're wired, right? The dominant score measures how somebody handles problems and challenges. Influence is about people and contacts. Steadiness is about pace and consistency, and compliance or conscientiousness is about procedures and constraints. And to the degree that people score in these, it'll tell you things about yourself. For example, if somebody is really high in compliance or really high in conscientiousness, they may become really analytical. They may get in their own way, and we can help people get past that, right? If somebody is, really high in that influence category, they might get attracted to the shiny object. They might really focus in on the business characteristics and the passion, and we might be able to help them step back and focus more on facts and data. So this is a really important tool, one, for us coaching our clients, but two, for you to recognize what are these environments in which you can potentially be the most successful. Where can you just be yourself? Um, so I'll turn it back over to Joe. I flew through all of that. Some of you may have done some of these exercises, but we certainly would encourage you to take the opportunity that we'll give you to do these, because you might learn something about yourself. And this is usually the point where it helps us figure out, is the path of entrepreneurship right for somebody? Is it potentially right? And sometimes that's what this exercise does, is it tells you, oh, hey, wait, I am actually on the best path to my goals. But sometimes it'll say I am not on the best path to my goals and I need to do something different. And then we can start talking about what that could look like. Anybody have any questions? It makes more sense when you get in and do it. All right, Joe, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thanks, Chip. One thing I would encourage everybody is you're probably starting to realize as we go through this, and we're going through the last exercise now, or we'll be going through, is that this is an investment in yourself. That so many times, right, when we're looking at our careers and we're looking at going on vacation or investing in a house or whatever it is, we spend time investigating and investing in it. But this is your career, this is your life. So we're vested in it with you, and this is why we want to make sure it's very thorough and that you do have the opportunity to educate yourselves on the right path. So really, as I mentioned earlier, give yourself permission to dream a little bit and give yourself permission to learn and explore. And that's really what we do and how we help. All right. So As Chip mentioned, that was the second exercise was the disc. The third exercise that we're going to have, you'll have the opportunity to go through is we call it defining your business attributes. And as I mentioned, all businesses aren't created equal. They have a lot of different results attached to them. They have a lot of different expectations, and success looks differently among them. So this is where you'll have the opportunity to kind of go through, and this is just a couple of the things that you'll have we'll talk about is really what role do you want to play in the business? Is this a business that you want to keep your corporate job while you own a business and use it as a transition plan sometime in the future? It can be done. If you're looking to be semi-absentee, my first business, that's exactly what I was looking to do was be semi-absentee. Semi-absentee is working not in the business, but on the business. And that's a big difference. So I wanted a business where I could work on the business and not in it. I didn't want to be the doer of the business. I wanted to be the overseer of the business. So there's businesses that allow you to do that. And then you can be the owner operator. And none of these are right or wrong. They just are structured in a way to allow the individual, the owner, to be successful. And that's why it's so important that you align with businesses that are structured through support that'll give you what you were looking for. And as I mentioned earlier, we work in every industry out there. We work with over almost 250 some odd different franchise businesses, every industry, every different business model that are out there. And as you go through the exercises, you're going to have the opportunity to check off some of those industries and say, hey, these are businesses I've always thought about. These are I'm curious about. I want to learn more about. Or you might just say, hey, I'm open to learning about anything that'll get me to where I want to go. And we'll talk about that as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll talk about all the different environments out there. Some clients are looking for a home-based business. They're looking for mobile-based businesses, work from anywhere. And so a lot of businesses can be multiple, right? This business that Chip and I own or franchisees of, it's virtual, it's work from home, it's work from anywhere. So it has a lot of different components to it. So again, what's right for you to learn about? And then we'll talk about an initial investment. Every business is going to have that initial investment, whether you're doing it on your own or you're doing it through a franchise business. And in a franchise business, that initial investment, it's made up of three big components, basically. The first component is going to be the franchise fee. That's where it's a one-time fee where you're going to own that business, buy the business, secure the business. It's yours. The second one-time fee is going to be the startup package. All franchises are designed to get you off and running. So they're going to get you there off and running differently. They're going to do it either through training, marketing, sales support, national call centers, website designs, whatever it is, supplies, whatever it is that you need to get going on day one to be successful. It's going to be a part of that startup package. And then the third big element that they build into that initial investment is working capital. And working capital can be anywhere from 1 month to 6 months. And usually it's an indicator of how long it'll take in order to start making money and have positive cash flow. But they really do it, they build that into that initial investment because if a client wants to finance their business, they have the ability to finance that working capital. So the neat thing about that is you're able to finance that working capital. So you have money for the business. So you're never worried about, okay, I got to take more money out of my savings or checking in order to run the business. No, you have enough money built into the business up front in order to be successful in it. And then the other thing that we'll talk about is the day in the life of the owner. So what happens is in a franchise business, and I would say it's probably in all businesses, but it's really more defined in a franchise business, is the three buckets that we've been talking about. A franchise is going to fill three buckets. One is going to be a financial bucket or a return on investment bucket. One is going to be a time bucket. How much time do you have to invest and how much time does it take to be to positive cash flow and reach your income goals? And then the third bucket is going to be what are the necessarily attributes and skills and what are the daily responsibilities of that owner. So all franchises are going to define that. And so that's what we're looking to understand through the exercises with you is really what's the day in the life? What kind of life do you want to lead? What kind of involvement do you want to have in that business? And does it align with that business? So an example of that might be some businesses out there might require you to knock on 100 doors per day and make 100 phone calls per week. And that's what you need to do to be successful in that particular business. And if that's not who you are, then that's probably not the right business for you to learn about. I would tell you that's not the right business for me. I'm not a salesperson. I've never been a salesperson. So I wouldn't want to be in that kind of situation. I wouldn't be happy to do it. So the key is to understand what's the day in the life of the owner versus employee. Because again, are you looking to be the employee, meaning the owner operator, or are you looking to be the semi-absentee, the general manager, the owner? What are you looking to do? Because those roles will be different. And as I mentioned, and I challenged, and I think Chip challenges his clients as well over these three things. It's passion versus practical versus time. Because again, these are the three buckets that I was just describing. There's a passion bucket. A franchise or a business in general is going to give you some level of passion. They're going to give you some level of return on investment and some level of time commitment on your part. And so, really, the question for you to consider is thinking about how do you prioritize these one, two, and three. Every business is going to deliver them, but they're going to fill those buckets differently. So how do you rank them one, two, and three? And then how do you define them? Again, time being how much time are you willing to invest? And then what's the realistic time frame in reaching your income goal? Return on investment is again defining those goals and the time around them. And passion can be defined many different ways. It's what you enjoy, what do you want to do? And I'll give you a couple examples of food for thought around passion. As Chip mentioned earlier, one version of passion might be is I like to cook, I like to eat, so I want to own a restaurant. That's what I'm passionate about. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome if that's right for you. But you have to then realize passion, if passion's number one, return on investment and time involvement or time investment might be two and three at that point. Another version of passion might be, I'll give you a personal example, is my first business, what I was looking for in a business to allow me the financial wherewithal and the flexibility of schedule to really take advantage of my passions. My passions was travel and art. Our passions were travel, volunteering, spending time with my family. So the business, in a sense, was a means to an end. It gave me the ability to do all the things that I wanted to do financially and from a time responsibility. This particular business that Chip and I do is for me, it's more about passion. I've always enjoyed part of my role has been mentoring, coaching, training, educating others, helping them see what might be possible and helping them achieve what could be possible for them. So this business allows me to be able to fulfill that passion and enjoyment that I get with helping others. And coincidentally, it's also pretty high on return on investment and it's high on my time because it allows me to work where I want, when I want, and how I want. So again, I would encourage you to think about defining and ranking passion, return on investment, and time. Because again, it's critical to learn about businesses that will deliver those three things in the way that you're looking to have them delivered. So as I mentioned earlier, what happens is that once you've completed these exercises, usually 2 to 3 Zoom calls with Chip and I, or separately actually, we'll do them separately. 45 minutes to an hour usually to go through the exercises and really try for Chip and I's perspective is we really want to get a really solid foundation of where you are, where you want to go, and how you want to get there, and what's the best course of education for you to continue with. And so the next phase of the education really falls under discovery and validation, as I mentioned earlier. So again, think of discovery and validation as simply an opportunity to continue exploring, learning, and educating. This time, though, you're going to be learning it from the franchisors. So what happens is Chip and I will start with 3 different franchises and present them to you after you've gone through the exercises that will align with everything that we would have talked about at that point. And those 3 will be a starting point for you to start to learn about different ways and different paths of getting to where you want to go. And that's called discovery. And you're meeting with the franchisors. They're educating you on the operations, the financials, the marketing, the support that they give, the coaching, every aspect of the business they're going to educate you on. And as you get educated on, they're going to start introducing you to franchisees. Franchisees are going to be able to validate for you. They're going to be able to answer any specific questions you have, validate what you'd like to know, what you thought you wanted to know, and what you think you should know, kind of a thing. And so part of that process is also going to be reviewing the franchise disclosure document, the FTD. So you may or may not be aware of that every franchise is regulated by the government. and they are regulated by each state. So what happens is they produce these franchise disclosure documents each year, and then they share them and review them with each of our clients. So you're able to really get a good, solid foundation and understanding of the financials of what that initial investment might look like, and then what the ongoing cost may be of the ongoing operations of the business. And as you're going through, as I mentioned, going through the validation calls, et cetera, you're going to have the opportunity to meet the team. It's called a meet the team day. In some cases, it might be discovery day. And that's where you get to meet the founder, the president, the owner, the CEO, the head of marketing, whatever the titles may be. You're going to get to meet them. And that's an opportunity for you to interview them and ask them questions. And they're going to interview you and ask you questions and understand, is this a good fit for you? And if it's a good fit for you and a good fit for them, then what's going to happen is they're going to offer you an award. They're going to award you the business if they can see that you can be successful and you have the right values, the skills, etc., attributes to being successful in their business. Once it's awarded to you, you have the opportunity to say yes or no. Keep in mind that again, this whole exploration education is not about committing, it's about learning. It's not about making decisions. It's about again exploring and getting educated. The other part of our education that we provide is around funding. So many times, clients, again, Chip mentioned they're concerned about, can I afford this? How do I afford this? So we'll provide a level of funding education. So this is just three large options that most clients will use, but there's many other options out there. These are not all inclusive. These are three. So I'm going to walk you through high level what this looks like. And really what we do as coaches will provide some education around funding, but ultimately what we do is we will refer you to funding partners, which are financial institutions that we utilize that are designed to educate you on all these different loan types and really get kind of underneath it. But as a high level, if you're considering SBA government funding, basically you need to have somewhere around 690 or better credit score to be eligible. And then they have kind of two loan types. They have what they call an express loan, which would be up to $150,000. That would require a 10% cash injection, and then over 150,000 would require 20. So, for example, if you're looking at an initial investment, let's call it 100,000. If you were going to go SBA, you would be coming up with about $10,000. They would finance the other $90,000. A lot of times clients want to look at other options because maybe they don't want to finance that or they don't want to come up with that 10%. So they may look to do unsecured loans. So unsecured loans, basically, the higher your credit score, the lower your interest rate. So it starts at 700. If you're 700, as you continue to increase over and above that, your interest rate comes down. And one of the values or one of the benefits maybe of an unsecured loan is that you're able to finance 100%. So you're able to finance 100% of the initial investment, and actually you're able to go over the 100% if you choose to want to finance the application fees and things like that. So an unsecured loan, if you have a credit score of 700 or above, will get you a lower interest rate, and you will also be able to finance 100%. And again, you're able to do that without pledging of any home assets or homes or things like that. Because that's another thing that a lot of fears that clients will have is I don't want to give up what I have. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to lose this and that and whatever. And it's understandable because most clients feel the same way. So would be an option. And then the third option that clients will use is what's called rollover for business startup, ROBS. So it's basically investing in yourself. So think of it this way, where you would take a portion of your retirement accounts, IRAs, et cetera, you would roll it into a corporation, and in that corporation that you would be in control of, that you would self-fund, and that would be the owner of that particular business. You're able to do this with no costs associated to it as far as penalties and early rollovers, things like that. And ultimately, what happens then, your business would pay back that corporation over a period of time. So you're investing in yourself, and you're investing using your own money. And obviously, in that, there's no interest or things like that. So these are just three big ways. Usually, a client, one of these three, are usually makes up probably about 75 or 80% of how an individual will finance a business. And then again, ultimately, there's other ways on top of this. So usually, what happens is when Chip and I are going through this with clients, we'll get asked the question, "How do I know if I found it?" And as Chip mentioned earlier, we're not smart enough to figure out what's the right business for you, but you're going to figure that out when you go through and get education on your educate, explore, and learn for yourself. But what we coach is a couple things. If you want to learn about being an entrepreneur and you want to learn about career transition and business ownership, keep in mind if you're looking at a franchise business, you're validating a system that's already proven and tested. So you're looking at it and learning from somebody in a system that's proven and tested. So keep that in mind. The other thing that we coach is that there's no perfect business. I'm not sure there's perfect anything, quite honestly. If you're looking for something perfect in a perfect business, you're not going to find it, and this is probably not the right thing for you to do. As Chip mentioned earlier, a lot of times we're all get nervous, we're all get scared, we're all anxious about something, we all get uncomfortable. And you probably will. I've owned multiple businesses, and every time I still have a little pit in my stomach when I'm thinking about the next thing. And even if when I transitioned from one job to another when I was in the corporate world, you still have that little bit of a pit of doubt, uncomfortableness of what is this really going to be. So really, the neat thing about this experience is that we allow our clients to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. So as I mentioned, this is a risk-free, no obligations, no commitments, no anything other than just we expect a curiosity and an open to learn. So if you're curious an individual and you're open to learn and want to learn, you're the ideal client for us. And this gives you the ability to kind of test drive. And think of it that way. You're able to test drive a business without actually owning the business. So that keep that in mind as you go through it. One of the things that I coach and we coach our clients on, and really what your goal should be, is really understanding and learning this last 20 or 30%. And so what that looks like and what we mean by that is every franchise business, because it is a proven system and they have a model in place, they're going to get you to the starting point. And that starting point might be 70 or 80%. But that last 20 to 30% of what success looks like is going to be you, the individual. And that's what our hope is for you to learn about. So as you're learning about the business and you're meeting with franchisees and you're validating, you're learning about who they are, what they are, what role do they play in the business, what are their skills, what have they done to be successful, how have they done it. And your goal really is to learn about, do you see yourself like that? If you see yourself like that, then it's probably an opportunity for you to continue to learn and understand more. If you don't see yourself being like them and being what the successful individuals look like, then it's not the right business for you and you need to move on. An example that I probably should have shared earlier, and we were talking about when we start with three franchise businesses to learn about, it's really the idea of learning those different paths. And Chip mentioned earlier about the vehicles to getting to where you want to be successful and how you can be successful. We mentioned earlier, Chip and I are in Charlotte, North Carolina, and if we said, "Hey, we want to get to Los Angeles next Tuesday," we can either drive, we can take a train, we can take a bus, or we can fly. All four modes of vehicles would get us to where we want to go. They would meet the goal, but they would get there differently. And that's what this experience is about, is learning those different ways of getting to where you want to go. And as you learn, you might say, trains are not for me. Planes is the way to go for me. Driving's not either. And that's what this experience is about, is learning the different ways of getting to where you want to go. And lastly, what I'll offer to you to think about when we talk about if you found it or not, is this statistic out there. And you can Google it, and it varies a little bit from here and there. But in general, what you'll find is that approximately 80 to 90% of all franchise businesses succeed in the first 3 years and remain open after five, while approximately 50 to 60% of non-franchise businesses fail and close in the first 3 years. So non-franchise businesses fail, close in the first 3 years. Franchise businesses remain open after 5 years, about 80 to 90%. And there's two big reasons why that happens. Again, not saying that non-franchise businesses can't be successful, but it's about education, knowledge, and understanding what it's going to take to be successful. And two of the big differences in them is the lack of support. In a non-franchise business, you're in business for yourself. You have to find the support that you need. First of all, figure out the support that you need and then find it. In a franchise business, they're going to come with all that support. They're going to give you all the marketing support, the training, the website management, the national call centers, all the different components of back office functions. So they're designed to fill the gap. You're gonna be able to go so far, and it's again they're gonna that 20 or 30%. They're gonna fill the gap to that 70 or 80% to help you be successful. The other big component of why there's a disparity between franchising and non-franchise success is going to be the financial component. So many times in a non-franchise business, you don't know how much things are going to cost. You don't know, I need to outsource this, I need to outsource that, and it's going to cost this, it's going to cost that, and you don't have the investment level or the financials to continue. So most cases of small business closes because of lack of financial wherewithal. Whereas in a franchise business, you're going to have learned about this is the initial investment to start your business, and this is going to be your ongoing costs on a monthly basis or yearly or quarterly, or however it may look. And you're going to know what all this is up front. And you're going to have, again, the support of a franchise to kind of manage through that. So, again, not saying one or the other is better or worse for you, for an individual. It's just what's right for you. But again, it's about going in with your eyes wide open and having the knowledge and expertise and being able to explore. So next question I usually get, and I'm sure Chip gets this too. Hey, if this is so wonderful, entrepreneurs so great, why doesn't everybody do it? And that's a great question. And really, this is the answer. The answer is fear is the number one emotional detour that keeps people from making life-changing decisions and reaching their goals. Fear, false evidence appearing real. So whether you're talking about you want to change your job, you want to buy a business, you want to explore business, you want to move to a new city, you want to get married, any life-changing decision that you make, what prohibits that individual from doing it is going to be fear. It's the emotional detour. So again, what we look at is false evidence appearing real. And as Chip mentioned earlier in that very first exercise, one of the goals is really for us to help you is identify what are your fears, what are your concerns, what are your worries, and let's build questions and education around it so you can get educated around it. And the more you learn, you'll either learn that you're confirming maybe your fears are true, and that's happens sometimes, or maybe you'll learn that maybe your fears are just false evidence appearing real. And coincidentally, there was a National Library of Medicine study done a few years ago that says 92% of all of our worries, anxieties, fears never happen. So 92% of all the things we worry about or fearful of and or anxious about never happen. That's a crazy, staggering statistic. And as I thought about it, I started thinking, how many times have I thought about when I was changing a job or going somewhere and making a decision or concerned about something I never had experienced before that I was anxious and worried about it. And as once I experienced it and went through it, I realized what was I worried about. So I'm sure if you thought about it so many times, you've been anxious and worried about certain things, and that when you start to experience it, you realize, hey, this is not really what I thought it was. So again, top three fears that are out there, and fear of change, again, fear of the unknown, and fear of finance. Can I afford to do this? Can I afford, to Chip's point, can I step back for a year and not make the income that I had been making maybe in that first year, knowing that the second and third and fourth years I'm possibly going to be exceeding that where I was? Can I take that step back, basically? Or do I have the financial wherewithal to actually to move forward? And I love this quote. I think this quote is kind of indicative of what we've been talking about as far as fear. Is courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. And really what this is saying is that is your dreams, is your lifestyle that you want to achieve, are your financial, personal, and professional goals, are they more important to you than your fear of moving and learning and getting educated? And it's important that in order to get to the fear, I'm sorry, in order to get to your goals, you have to go through those fears and you have to have the courage. And it doesn't mean you're never going to have fear. You're never going to have a pit in your stomach. As I mentioned, I'm sure Chip would attest to it. As I mentioned, every time I try something new and different, I get a little pit in my stomach a little bit. And when I've owned multiple businesses, when I'm signing that agreement, I've decided I got a little pit in my stomach. Heck, even when I bought a house, and I bought 12 houses over my lifetime. Every house I bought, I get that little pit. Okay, a 30-year mortgage. Okay, is this the right house, the right neighborhood? I'm not sure. And you start doubting yourself. That's always going to be there. But again, the key is to say, I'm going to have enough courage to fight through that, because what the goal on the other side is much more important. And this kind of, again, is indicative of kind of what this experience is about and why people don't move forward, and how Chip and I help clients explore business ownership or transition, quite honestly, is that most people are sitting here in the comfort zone. I'm comfortable. I have an income, I have a job, I have a life, I have whatever it is. I'm comfortable. I feel safe. But as you can see, you can't grow until you get through the fear zone. And that's really what this coaching experience is about, is helping clients start to get through the fears, at first identify what the fears are, build education around them, learn about them. And as you start learning about them, then you're going to start to grow. And again, in order to get to anything in life, in order to grow as an individual, you have to get through any fears that you might have, any doubts that you might have, any worries, and really start learning. And as you start to learn, you will definitely start to grow. So as we kind of start to wind down on the first part of this workshop today, is I'm going to end it with this right here. Franchise business ownership. Again, why you'd want to at least learn about it. Again, not saying franchise business is right for you, but at least why would you want to not learn about it? It's because you're in business for yourself, but you're not by yourself. Again, that's one of the big differences as I talked about the success of a non-franchise versus success of a franchise business. In a franchise business, you're not alone. You have support. So usually then a lot of times I'll work depending on the type of individual or client I'm working with, they'll say, franchises are not for me because they're so restrictive. Yeah, that might be true in some cases. Franchises can be restrictive. But what I will offer to you to think about is every franchise is designed to provide guardrails. They provide guardrails to keep you on the road. And the guardrails are in different spots. In some franchises, they're very narrow guardrails. This is the playbook that we're going to hand you, the playbook you should execute, and you're going to be successful. And then there's other franchises that have guardrails in much broader perspective, where you're allowed to have more innovativeness, more creativity, more flexibility. You're able to do all the things, more autonomy as a business owner. So they're there when you need them, and they're not there when you don't need them, kind of a thing, overlooking you. And so that's what part of the exercises are, is what's right for you. I can't speak for Chip, but I think he's somewhat similar. I'm the type of owner that I want to have autonomy. I want to have creativity. I don't want someone looking over my shoulder. And so both of the franchises that I've owned allow to give me the support that I need it, when I want it. But I'm able to run my business the way I want to do it. And quite honestly, this is evident Chip and I doing this right here. This is not part of the business model, quite honestly, of the entrepreneur source. But Chip and I are able to do it because we see value in being able to talk to individuals like yourself and hopefully be able to help and support them. So again, keep in mind, franchise business ownership, you're in business for yourself, but you're not by yourself. So before we move on to the next topic, if you will, and kind of start to wind down a little bit on the first phase of this, I'd like to pause again for a second again and offer up, is there any questions, or what questions can we answer for you? Again, we're throwing a lot at you in a short period of time, but is there questions that we can answer for you? All right. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in chat. Thank you, Jason. And again, we'll have time at the end as well to kind of answer some questions. But at this point, what we're going to talk about is really what are the next steps. So, what are the next steps, and how do we help clients continue to start this process? So, I'm going to turn this back over to Chip, and he's going to start kind of walking you through a little bit.
Yeah, and I do want to go, man. That stuff was so good, um, Joe. That comfort is kind of the silent killer of dreams, right? It keeps you stuck. So we always tell people you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, even if it's for a little while. And Jason, yeah, I was picking on you a little bit because even though we're talking about franchise businesses, you were bold enough to start your own business. You got uncomfortable. I would be willing to bet that you did not grow up as a kid dreaming of owning your own cleaning business, right? And that's one of the things that I always tell my clients too, and it's funny, but it's certainly proven to be correct that of the people that we work with that ever get into business for themselves, almost all of 90% of those folks are going to end up in something they admittedly would have never looked at on their own. And that's key to this whole experience, which is just giving yourself permission to learn and giving yourself permission to step out of the box, right? There's comfort in what you have done, right? You're successful in exactly what you're doing. But what you've done is not always what you have to do. And so getting okay with that is what lets you step out of the box and lets you look down different paths and lets you look at businesses that you may not have otherwise considered. And you might just find the right thing. But this whole experience, it's so much about empowerment. And like Joe said, you might learn that franchising isn't right for you. And that's okay. It's not right for everybody. We've all got clients that of course they invest in franchise businesses, but some of them use this experience to get a little bit of confidence in themselves to go out and start that business that they have always dreamed of. Or maybe they go and buy an existing business, or maybe they figure out that they're best suited for the corporate world. But the value of this experience is in the empowerment of being able to make those choices, right? So, and that's what you get to do. You ultimately get to make the best choice about whatever is right for you and your family going forward, whether that's getting into business for yourself, whether that's going back to the corporate world, whether that's investing in a franchise, who knows? You'll figure it out. But there is a method to our madness here, right? And we've been talking a lot, and historically, we've taken people through these steps, but the business here has even evolved to the point where we have this client portal now that does start to put some structure to this. And so all of the things that we've talked about now reside in a password protected personalized client portal. And we'll unlock this for all of you just for being on this call so you can go in and get access to these exercises. This first one, discover what makes you unique. This is the assessment that we talked about, the DISC assessment. And it's going to produce a 40-page output that is all about you and all about what makes you tick and what's motivating to you, and use that as an opportunity to understand what are the ideal environments where I can just be myself. You'll be able to download the results of that. Certainly, we can coach you through the understanding of it. This next one, write your own success story. That's that U 2.0 exercise that we talked about, just giving you the opportunity to step back and reflect and say, what do I want and what do I want my life to look like? Part of this whole experience, there is a book that we send out, and as you'll notice, it's not a right. We're not sending you War and Peace or anything to read. It's a pretty light read, but it's putting a lot of this into practice, and it's some exercises that accompany what we do, and it's really just about being very intentional about again what you want your life to look like, so you can go out and find it. Um, the last exercise that's at least listed here is that defining business attributes exercise. And we call it tell us more about you. But you get to start saying, okay, well, if these are my goals, here's how I want to do things, right? For example, I want to work from home or I want a place to go. And it lets you start thinking about your skills. What skills have you accumulated? And what are those skills that you enjoy doing? And what are your thoughts about being in business for yourself? And what are industries that you're curious about and you're open to learn about? And don't sell yourself short here, right? Don't focus too much on that past winning formula. Okay, again, I say I spent my entire 30 years of my career in sales and management, and it was this whole exercise that made me realize the two things I really hate doing are selling and managing. So give yourself an opportunity to think a little bit differently, right? Again, I use Jason's example. I'm sure he didn't grow up dreaming of being in a cleaning business, but man, you talk about something that is steady and stable and tremendously scalable. You can be an owner in a cleaning business and never be the cleaner, right? I could own a hair salon even though I have no hair. So give yourself the opportunity to just be open for what's out there, right? This is about you learning. Go ahead and go to the next one, Joe. There are some other things that we unlock in the portal depending on where we get in these conversations with our clients, right? We want you to have a really defining statement. We refer to it as a vision statement or a North Star. And when you do that U 2.0 exercise and DISC, and you really define those income and lifestyle wealth and equity goals, we'll help you construct this vision statement so you've got something there that you're solving for, right? You're changing from objective to subjective, right? You're now being able to look at a business based on the perspective of this is what I'm trying to solve for. And there's a place on here to really consider okay, what are the differences between the corporate world or between independent business ownership or buying an existing business or, investing in real estate, investing in franchising? Because those are all different vehicles and not one of them's right for everybody. It really does depend on your goals. There is a whole section here about making that dream a reality and understanding strategies around small business funding. And again, some of these may come into play if you decide to start an independent business or you decide to buy an existing business. It's not all specific to franchising, but there's so many paths to funding that people don't understand. They think it's all about you being able to write a big fat check. But in the 8 years I've been doing this, the clients that I've worked with that have self-funded anything, I can count on one hand. And if I lost a couple of fingers, I could still count it on one hand. Most people are working with a small business funding partner to come up with what is the right strategy based on the business, based on your risk tolerance, based on your unique situation. So give yourself an opportunity to understand all these strategies around small business funding so that you know what's in your back pocket if you ever get to the point and you think you really want to do something. And Joe talked about that validation experience where, for our clients that do want to educate themselves about franchise businesses, that seems intimidating, right? But we're going to be there kind of sitting on the same side of the table with you or walking down the same side of the street as you have those conversations. And we're going to ensure that those are safe conversations where you're not feeling pressure and when you're not feeling obligation about making decisions. And so we're going to give you some information to help you navigate those things. And then every time you have one of those conversations, we're going to be there to talk with you and take it back to your goals and go through what you learned and what surprised you and what are things that you heard that you liked and what are things that you heard that you didn't like, because we might shift gears and go in different directions. So this is a very structured process of going through this whole discovery experience, again, to empower you to make the best decisions for yourself going forward if you ever choose to make a decision.
Thanks, Chip. So what I'd love to just do is share a couple of last parting thoughts before we open it up for some questions and then move to the next step. Chip talked earlier that there's a key difference between a franchise broker and us as coaches, franchise coaches, business coaches. And a broker represents brands. We as coaches represent clients. So our loyalty is to you, the client. So as Chip just mentioned, we're going to be with you along the way, and we're going to be your biggest advocate and your biggest supporter, and we're going to help go through it. So we represent clients. And the goal of this is really to arrive again to where you need to be, where again is a franchise broker is going to predetermine, say these are the best businesses for you.